So, greetings, brothers and sisters, and welcome to this edition of the Africa Unity Week. And we are today focusing on the topic of justice regarding our brothers and sisters and families that are being affected by police brutality and state sanctioned killings. Today, we have the honor of having disputed speakers who will talk about the campaigns they are working on, and we also hope to gain some insight into what strategies we can employ while tackling this very insidious issue of racism. Especially, we will be dealing with the topic of mental health, the intersections of mental health and racism, and also talking about how can we really adequately as a community respond when Black lives are stolen and taken so viciously. I am Sister Oloran Toyin from the Black Community Coalition of Justice and Self-Defense, here with Brother Mwai Musta.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I also welcome you to our hybrid online panel on the justice issues where our families and communities have been traumatized again and again, and most importantly, where justice has never ever been served, neither in Germany, not in one single case, nor as far as I know in the UK. We are happy to have here outspoken family and friends and activists from the UK, Marcia Rigg and Achibola Lewis. They will tell us in the course more on the cases of their brother and son. Yeah, and we have further invited Vanessa Thompson, who will speak on the case of Christy Schwundeck. We have the member of the International Women's Space, Jennifer Kamau from Berlin, who will speak on the case of Rita Awour Ojunge. And maybe later also join in Oury Jalloh, the brother of Oury Jalloh, to tell us how the perspective of the family of the Jalloh family, with all the things going on in courts and what the police and politicians and media were doing. Okay.
Yes, so as we move forward, let us remember the words of Malcolm X. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. Let us be guided by a Pan-African consciousness, understanding that our struggles are interconnected and that our unity is of great strength. Join me in welcoming our first speaker, Marcia Rigg, who will share with us her personal experience and insight into the advocacy for justice. Welcome, Marcia.
Welcome, Marcia.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, but we can't see you.
You can't see me. My camera's on. Okay. Good evening, my brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak on this wonderful platform again with my brothers and sisters internationally. I'm here with my sister Ajibola Lewis, and we're from the UK. And I'm just here to tell you my experience, which I'm sure is not much different to yours and your families in Europe. And so my beloved brother was Sean Rigg, who died almost 16 years ago this year, following the use of excessive force by Metropolitan Police officers during a mental health crisis. And that was in August 2008. We've not received justice, the right justice that we feel that we should have. And it has really been a long drawn out campaign, which is something that happens in the United Kingdom. I think some people think that perhaps we may get justice in the UK. We've got the inquest system, which is a jurisdiction and fact-minding jurisdiction to find out who, how, when, and somebody died at the hands of the state, be it police officers or prison officers or in mental health settings, as Ajibola will tell you all a little bit later. But my brother Sean was a young man who suffered with mental health for about 20 years. He suffered with schizophrenia, but lived a relatively normal life. He was not a criminal. He was not under any sanctions or sections at all. He lived a relatively independent life, but he was living in like a halfway house where his the monitoring of his medication could be had. But he was living his life. He was a musician and well-traveled. He'd been to Germany as one of his places as well, and was writing music. He traveled to Thailand, Europe, the Caribbean, Ethiopia, and these were during times when he suffered with his illness was for a period of 20 years. Within the mental health system, what I call a revolving door system, where it is overpopulated by particularly young Black men, in stark contrast to our white counterparts. And they are medically restrained as well, I would like to say, where they receive medication rather than therapeutic remedies to help bring them back into the community. And a lot of them actually die at the hands of the police or mental health staff in institutions. But my brother was killed by the police. So in August 2008, he was having a mental health crisis, and members of staff at the hostel where he was staying was seeking help for him to go to a place of safety, which is a hospital. But the police refused to respond, and saying that he hadn't done anything criminal. Eventually, he went out into the streets where it was obvious to members of the public that he was behaving in a bizarre manner, and it was somebody that appeared to suffer with mental health. He was a danger to others and a danger to himself, and he was in and out of traffic that day. And luckily, nobody was hurt. A member of the public was not hurt, even though he was kicking out to members of the public. Nobody was hurt, and there was no serious contact with them. But it was obvious that he was unwell. And a member of the public actually called for the police as well. The police arrived, and he was restrained by 4 Metropolitan Police officers in what we call in the UK the prone position, which is face down in grass, very similar in the way that George Floyd died. And everybody listening in has heard of George Floyd and the horrific murder that we all witnessed during the lockdown. But George Floyd is not the first death, and he certainly hasn't been the last death, the last one. So the police restrained my brother for up to between 7 to 8 minutes. He was handcuffed to the rear He was no threat to any of the officers, and he was kept in that position for about 7 to 8 minutes. He was then assisted to a police vehicle where the officers claimed that in the footwell of the police vehicle, which was a cage inside the police vehicle, where the 4 officers could see Sean through perplexed windows, the officers claimed that Sean was upside down in the back of the footwell area where he'd entered the back of the van, and they said that he slipped down into the footwell and that he was on his back upside down, handcuffed to the rear, with his feet walking 360 degrees on the wall cage of the van. The officers were driving at speed back to the police station and not to a hospital. He was actually arrested for theft of his own passport that he was carrying on that day. The officers claimed that it didn't look like him. The emergency 999 calls that were made leading up to his death over a period of a couple of hours, the police claimed that they did not recognize that he had mental health issues, and they claimed that they were not aware of the earlier 999 calls that had been made by hostel staff. So there were witnesses to Sean's arrest, where there was one officer at the top part of his torso at the back, towards his neck and his shoulders, and one officer at his feet, and another officer that once Sean was under control was I'd searched Sean's pockets, where they found the passport and some cash that he was counting, and the most senior officer, actually, who was the driver, had left the scene to go and bring the van so that they could transport him in the police vehicle back to the station. So Sean was, by the witness accounts, he was not resisting. It was likely that he was struggling to breathe, and then put into the van, where the officers claimed that he was doing a spinning action at the back of this vehicle. On CCTV, it can be seen that the officers go back to the station at speed, and he arrives at the police station, where it's caught on camera, where the van enters the station, but my brother doesn't, he's not removed from the vehicle until about 10 to 11 minutes after his arrival at the station, where officers were giving varying accounts at the time, when they said that he was being monitored at the back of the station, that the custody suite was busy, and that they were trying to clear it to bring him in to the custody suite to book him in for theft of his own passport, alleged assault on a police officer, and for an offensive weapon. That's what was said on the actual night. But when Sean actually appeared on camera, and he was removed from the police vehicle in a collapsed state, heavily assisted to the entrance of the custody suite, he never actually entered that suite because Sean immediately collapsed. And it was obvious that he was unwell, where the officers' evidence is that they claimed that he was asleep. And which was extraordinary, because this is somebody that they claimed that was being violent, attacking people in the street, being kicking off in the back of the police vehicle, and that they needed to clear the custody suite and take him into a police cell. And they cleared the custody suite because he was apparently a dangerous person and being violent. But it was obvious from the footage that was shown in court, and members of the jury could see, and members of the public, that Sean was clearly unwell and in a collapsed state. There then proceeded a number of inactions or actions by the Metropolitan Police, whereby it can be seen on the CCTV where they have put his what were exhibits became his shoes and the passport that he was carrying, and some money. Even though they claimed that they claimed that they didn't realize it was Sean Rigg, but it was obvious that it was Sean Rigg by the passport, and nobody made a check on the passport. And to them, it appeared that he was faking it, faking unconsciousness by the sergeant, who also claimed that when he was in the yard in the police vehicle before he was removed in a collapsed state to the entrance of the custody suite, he claimed wrongly that he went to the police vehicle and looked at my brother and looked at Sean directly in the eye, that he was sitting up at the back of the police vehicle on the seat, not in the footwell, and that he shouted at him, and that Sean didn't respond. But because he looked at him and his eyes were open, or he looked at his eyes, that it was, he assessed that he was well and fit. But the evidence proved that actually he did lie about that, and he never left the custody suite area at any time and went to the van. So when he does actually first see Sean, he's in a collapsed state. He's been propped up by police officers in a caged area, where you can capture the events that take place from a camera inside the custody suite that's looking into the yard, because this was the entrance and it was effectively in the courtyard. And Sean was wearing only trousers. He was bare-chested from the waist up and showed clear signs of somebody that was suffering mental health, and he had all the indications of somebody in a mental health crisis. And so he didn't actually receive the care that he needed and deserved. And the officers claimed, like I said, when Sergeant White did attend to Sean, that he was faking unconsciousness, when clearly, and what did actually happen, is that my brother was dying before our very eyes. And the officers stood Sean up and were claiming that he stood up by himself. This is somebody that has been restrained for a period of 7 to 8 minutes, where the medical evidence was that there would have been a lack of oxygen going to his brain. So therefore it was a medical emergency, and he needed medical help immediately. But sadly, what our brother received was a death sentence and was taken to Brixton police station. And once my brother was stood up by the officers, it took 2 or 3 officers to actually physically stand him up, which is clear on the footage. And Sean is obviously collapsed because his head is collapsed and is hanging down, like I'm showing you in this video. And they eventually, after a short time, about a minute or so, I can't recall, let go of Sean, where he collapses first to his knees and then to the floor, and the officers put him into a prone position. At this stage, no doctor has been called, even though there's a forensic medical examiner on the police premises. And Sean clearly needs medical attention. So it's about 20 minutes or so, I think, after Sean arrived at the station before he's seen by a forensic medical examiner who's a GP, who claimed that Sean was having a heart attack and told the police to call an ambulance and to cover him with a blanket. But obviously from the CCTV, that was not done immediately. And within less than an hour, my brother was dead, because the officers realized at some point that he wasn't breathing, and commenced CPR, to which my brother never recovered. In my opinion, my brother had been dead before the officers claimed that he was not breathing, and you can hear clearly on the footage where the sergeant says, "If he dies in here, we're all in the shit," which means that they were under no illusion as to the circumstances of what was happening in real life in the custody suite. And so by the time paramedics did arrive on the scene and continued CPR, there was no heart rhythm, and he was taken to King's College Hospital, the local police station hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 9:24 p.m. But a jury 4 years later at an inquest found that he had died an hour before, at least, if not before, 8:24 p.m. Where it was obvious on the CCTV that Sean was unwell, and that they called for CPR, for defib, which meant that there was no heart rhythm. And following that night, there was a series of investigations, which will, kind of take a long time to go through everything now. But the investigation was very a thorough investigation, which took almost 11 years to complete, because of the family's insistence and the family campaigning and the family's own investigation as to what happened. We had to, watch the CCTV. My brother had translated the audio of the CCTV at the Brixton police station. We trawled through thousands of pages of evidence, and there was an IPCC investigation, which is, in the UK, it's an independent governmental body that investigates police deaths and complaints. But my family found that we were not able to depend on them, because it's usually employed by ex-police officers who front the investigation. And sorry, I'm actually looking in the chat, and I think I've come out of the screen and I can't see anybody. Oh yes, I can see you now. Excuse me. So the IPCC's investigation, which took 4 years, found that the officers did absolutely nothing wrong, and exonerated those police officers in their first report. But members of the public that was in a jury saw the evidence that we saw, in court and found that the actions or inactions of the police officers more than minimally contributed to his death, including the mental health team, that there was a history of Sean where he suffered with mental health, where he would stop taking his medication, and he could become unwell quite quickly, but could recover quickly once he received his medication. And they could have done something at least a week before, and they could have contacted the family. They could have intervened much quicker so that he received his medication, because we found out that he was overdue his medication by 2 months, and the mental health team had not done anything about it. So it was inevitable that he would become actively psychotic, hallucinating and hearing voices, and sadly it part of that causes death. Well, mental health doesn't kill you, but restraint does. So the jury found at the inquest that their actions contributed to his death. Eventually, the case was reopened as a criminal investigation by the Independent Police Complaints Commission. We also had the first perjury trial in the UK, where the officer who claimed that he gave a risk assessment to Sean in the back of the vehicle was not true. But what was extraordinary is that officer actually didn't receive the accountability that he deserved, and but that criminal jury was not afforded the facts that were found at the actual inquest a few years before by that jury. There was a series of judicial reviews by the police and by the family. One of them attempted to retire, and that was reversed while he was still under investigation. But he actually became a priest and was ordained in the Church of England whilst he was still under investigation, which was extraordinary. The officers claimed almost 10 years later, when after the Crown Prosecution Service found that there was insufficient evidence for a successful prosecution against any of the officers or the sergeant, which again was extraordinary. We had to appeal that decision, but again the Crown Prosecution Service said there was insufficient evidence. And so in the end, we had a gross misconduct hearing, which was conducted by the Metropolitan Police and the IPCC, the Independent Police Complaints Commission, which agreed that there was a case to answer for at least gross misconduct. The officers claimed because 10 years down the line, they could not remember anything, and that it would have been an unfair trial for them to go through the hearings. And so again, my family, 10.5 years down the line without a break, was still judicial reviewing the police to ensure that misconduct hearing went ahead, which did happen. But again, that panel, gross misconduct panel, found that the officers did nothing wrong, and essentially the fact that 7 minutes was not excessive, even though my brother is dead. So what I'm trying to say is that's my personal experience and my family's, and it's extraordinary that with such compelling evidence there is no justice. The fact that the family is continually traumatized, and no automatic funding to families, there's obstacles all the way for families, and we never received justice. Yeah, I think I've gone on a bit too long, but That's what happened to my family. The rest is history. Because in the meantime, we found out just last year that those officers, the Independent Police Complaints Commission, that found that they had a case to answer, paid the police officers compensation to the tune of £65,000 in secret, a payment that was made by the British UK Home Office to the police officers for the length of time that it taken to complete the investigation, and for the trauma that it affected the police officers and their family and their private life, which is extraordinary. But at the minute, that's where the case is at. The case is still alive, even though the forensic evidence by all the governmental state agents have concluded that the case is over. But it's not. Thank you for listening. Can you hear me? The host. That's the end of my talk for the moment. And are there any questions? Can you all hear me? Thank you.
Maybe just to ask, how does are you all both following the case of your brother with Aji?
Yes, well, it's a similar case. So, you know, whilst Aji will tell you about what's happening with her case and in what happened to her son. But for us, it's very important that families campaign together and to show the patterns and the similarities in our cases, not just Aji's and myself, but generally, particularly with young Black men with mental health. So it's very powerful collectively. If we can share our experiences and to show the patterns within the judicial system, because it's fundamentally flawed.
For sure, yeah.
I don't know if I don't know what's happened to the hosts. Anybody know? Shall I
Maybe
just
maybe you can
start?
continue.
Yeah. Let me just, so we don't waste too much time because we're running late. Hi everybody. I'm everybody calls me Aji rather than Ajibola, but I'm Aji Lewis. My son Olaseni Lewis was 23 when he went out with some friends to celebrate his master's and the fact that he was going to America to do his PhD. And he came back and he said, Mom, they've given me something bad, or I took something bad. I don't know what it was, because by the time we wanted to investigate, he was dead. But anyway, this was a bank holiday weekend. He got very agitated, paranoid, and he himself said he was going to go to hospital. Would we go with him to find out what had happened? So we eventually went. I'm doing this very quickly because it's it's a long story. But anyway, eventually we went, and sorry, sister, I don't know. I'm talking because you disappeared for a while. So I'm
Go ahead, go ahead. We seem to have a network problem, but go ahead.
okay. Okay.
That's
Okay.
really fine.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, long story short, we ended up at a hospital that we took him to about 5:30 in the evening. And when I got there, I thought, no, this is not a good place. Very noisy, very chaotic. Anyway, he went there as a voluntary patient. He knew that he could leave at any time. So when we left about 8:30 visiting hours, I was very uneasy. And I said to my daughter, my eldest daughter, I think I'll stay in the car because I don't feel good, you know? So she said, no, Mom, they've got your phone number. They'll call you. Anyway, I went home and then there was a call from his best friends to say, do we know what's happened? There's been an incident and he's now in the local hospital in A&E on life support. We didn't know, but we're a praying family. So we basically were praying for him to wake up, not knowing what had happened. But how we found out because there was a knock on the door to ask us if we knew what had happened to him. It was an Evening Standard newspaper, so it's a London newspaper, and they were running a story. A whistleblower had called them. Did we know? We said, no, we didn't know. Run the story, then we'll comment. So eventually they ran the story for 2 nights. And that's how we found out that after we'd left, as a voluntary patient, he knew he could leave, but instead of calling us, they called the police. And up to 11 police officers came into the hospital, restrained him, took him down to the seclusion room. But in the morning, he'd already been in one, he'd seen one, so he didn't want to go in. So he put his hands on the door frame, but they pushed him in and restrained him. Then they tried to do what they call a cell extraction, which is leave before the person leaves, you know. So they were meant to leave quicker than he was, but he was very quick. He's quite an athlete. So he got to the door before some of them. So they battened him, pushed him back in, restrained him, 2 sets of restraint on his stomach like this, leg braces, and restrained him in 2 sets of restraint for about 45 minutes. And at the inquest, where you find out what happened to your loved one, they were saying, oh, we were so hot. We took off our jackets. We asked for water. And the coroner said, what about the person you were restraining? Didn't you think that they were hot? They needed water? But for some reason, I would say they were a bunch of idiots. Honestly, that's all I can say. The police were a bunch of idiots, 11 of them, and not one of them could think that about the restraint they were giving, they were imposing on my son. Anyway, after about 45 minutes, his body went limp. Now, even a 2-year-old knows that that might be a medical emergency, but no, the police are idiots. And they left him because they said he was pretending, faking it. He wasn't really dying. He was pretending. So they left him in the room on the floor. All the time, the staff were outside watching. And they said at the inquest, we were shouting, we were screaming, telling them to stop. Listen, let me not say what I want to say. Anyway, so when they got back into the seclusion room, they found he was lifeless, but they're quite good they resuscitated him. But we didn't know that his brain had been dead for about 45 minutes. So we, as a family, were praying for him to wake up. But they knew what they had done. Eventually, the hospital said that he was brain dead and we should turn off the life support after they did a brain stem cell test. Anyway, we turned off the life support on a Saturday, lots of family and friends around. And on the Sunday, we went to church. His friend said, "Mum, we're coming to church with you." And it was at church that I met Marcia's youngest sister, Sam. Sam went to the same church. I had just started going to the church, but she'd been there. And she came to me and said, "Listen, my brother, Sean Rigg, was killed by police 2 years earlier at Brixton Police Station. Marcia's just told you that. And I'll get you a lawyer." So we were we are quite blessed here to have a charity called Inquest, the charity. And they, for about 30 years, they have been, they have a group of lawyers that deal with cases of state deaths. So we were able to get a very good lawyer who had about 30 years experience. And we were also able to stop the autopsy, because that's what they like to do. Do an autopsy before the family can be represented. That's a little trick they like to pull, the police and the Home Office. Anyway, we were able to stop that. And we got our own pathologist to go and see what they were doing and to come and report to us. You pay for it, but it was worth every penny. Anyway, eventually we had to wait for 7 years to get our inquest, to find out what had happened to our son. At the inquest, you know, one of the most disturbing things, I think the doctor was the whistleblower, because the same things that were said in the article in the Evening Standard by the whistleblower, he said in court that he felt he was watching an animal being trussed up, that it wasn't a human being. He actually said this in court. Eventually, we were able to get a very good narrative verdict. We couldn't get manslaughter. The coroner wouldn't accept that, but we got a very good narrative verdict, you know, unnecessary, unlawful, excessive, restraint and force had been used, and that had contributed to his death. And it was after that that our MP, Member of Parliament, came up to us and said, "Listen, I want to get a private member's bill through Parliament in honour of your son." And that's what we did. In 2018, we got a bill. Very few people, very few. Well, there's no other deaths in custody that have been able to get a bill on the statute books. So we were able to do, get a bill. We call it Cheney's Law. Everybody knows it as Cheney's Law, but it's actually the Mental Health Use of Force Units Act 2018. And that, I must say, was the easy part. Getting it on the statute book was easier. But now I spend all my time talking to mental health units, talking to hospitals, different trusts across England, implementing the law. The law is a real game changer. It really is, because now hospitals, they never had all of this before. They have to have training. They have to have a specified trainer. They have to have, the board has to be responsible for giving the Home Secretary statistics about the deaths in custody. Police have to wear body-worn cameras if they come into the hospital. We had no evidence like that for Cheney. He died in a room without cameras. So we couldn't, our only saving grace was that the hospital staff were determined to blame the police for killing him. So that was our little bit of magic. The hospital staff went and told us what had happened, because they weren't going to take the blame. Although I say I place a lot of blame on them, because how can you be outside screaming and shouting and not coming in and stopping the police when you know what they're doing? Anyway, Cheney's Law is now a law. It has to be followed. And it's the one little bit of victory I have, because whatever they do, they can't ignore it. They have to implement it. And that to me is the victory I can give my son. As Marcia said, there is no justice. There is no justice. But we do little things. Marcia's done a lot in memory of Sean, and we do a lot. You know, we have a Olaseni Lewis Award. We made them set up. We do different things, the training. We make them do extensive training in hospitals, other than Olaseni's law, other training. So yes, that is our story. That's how we live our lives. You know, I wanted to just say, you know, James Baldwin said that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it's faced. You have to face the fact that they're killing our young Black men, mainly young Black men, in mental health units. There is no justice. All we can do is continue to fight. And that's what Marcia and I and thousands of other families do. We fight for justice. Well, the little bit of justice we can get. That was, yeah, I can hear an echo.
Yeah, thank you very much, both of you, Marcia and Ajibola. We have now had the two cases. We will have more cases, and we want to see what are the preconditions to it. We want to see the reasons why police officers see Black people in a certain way. Why police officers cannot reflect themselves accordingly. Why police officers do use excessive force, although they are trained and should know what is dangerous and what is not dangerous, like the belly prone position. It's common knowledge now that it's very dangerous to put a person there and to get yourself on the back of it. So that is the side of how they kill people. But there's also another side, and that has been talked about, that justice is not being served. What are the conditions and the surroundings? Why? I mean, it's obvious if the police is investigating against themselves that there will be no solid conclusion. But it's more than the police. We also have the prosecutions. We also have courts. And in the UK, we even have independent bodies where here in Germany, people will say, this is what we need. But if these independent bodies are faced with the same litigation, with the same prosecution, with the same judges, with the same system of law, I wouldn't call it a state of law, unless state is just like state of the art and not state as a political institution. This litigation system, these courts, they too are designed not to deliver justice if it's about crimes of state officers, crimes of a state. So there will be no self-prosecution, no accountability whatsoever. There will always be excuses. And on the other side, people will imagine how dangerous the actual victims are as possible perpetrators against the poor police officers. So this is always the way how they try to get themselves out.
Yeah.
We have two cases here I want to shortly mention. One was 30th of March in a city of Nienburg. A Gambian citizen called Lamin Touray was in a mental health crisis. His partner, his partner was calling for help. Sorry, was calling for help, meaning with help that medical people are coming, that he's taken to a hospital. So now the people were saying they will not do it without the police. So the first day they didn't come. The second day they also didn't come, but the police came. And what then happened was like more than 10 police officers were just wrecking his door. He was going into the garden, his small garden in the house. There they were circling him, 10 police officers and a police dog, barking at him, threatening him, in a situation where this is the last thing you can ever, what you ever need or what you can handle, So then that was why I suppose Lamin was now defending himself from this barking, attacking dog with a small knife, so injuring the police dog. And what happened after that is like what one could hear from a video that was shortly after in the social media. It was like a series of shots, like boom, 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 boom. So there were 8 shots with 2 major breaks in it. And if one was watching the video carefully, one could see minimum one of the shots did miss. And as a matter of the fact, there was also a police officer, female police officer, who was close to the man, who was also injured by a police shot. So at the end of the day, Lamin was shot 8 times. So 8 bullets hit his body. What one could hear from the video was 8 shots. One was missing. One was with a police officer. So how many shots have been given up onto that man by how many police officers? There is no answer to that question, which should be very easy to answer. They collected the weapons of the police officers. They can count how many bullets are missing. So they could have said, so and so many police officers fired on the man from different angles, and so many shots were given by each of these police officers, making it minimum 10. But this information is not given. Rather, is the criminalization of the man. So the police was saying the Lamin was threatening his wife, who called the ambulance, with a knife, which was a plain lie. That then he was defending himself against a dog. If you are in a mental crisis and you have this barking, fletching dog in front of you, I'm quite sure all people who are in a normal mental state, they will have a problem handling that situation of a police dog barking at you with an aggressive police officer in the back of that dog. You will be feeling threatened, life threatened. That is what you will feel. But if you are in a mental crisis again now, so that is even much worse to handle. And the last thing that is making one thing is that there have been the 2 shots where one could see Lamin was already hit. Then you have been hearing the 5 shots where you never saw him beyond the fence again. So he went down. And then another break, and then another single shot. So the question is, what was this single shot for? Who made it and what for? But this is again, I come back to what Marcia and Ajibola have already been saying. The people are already dead, and they are still in, they still are in a state of that they have to be very, very oversure that this person is no more danger. That is like creating a situation of an overkill. Yeah, that is our brother Lamin. So when we hear what the prosecution is saying, that he attacked a dog and he was attacking, in question mark, a police officer who was hiding or protecting himself behind a shield. So the police officer was never really hit. He was never really in danger. So the question is why he had to be killed. And the question is also why the police again and again is not involving experts of psychology, experts of medicine who might have the expertise to know what to do. For obviously, these police officers do not know what they do. They they escalate themselves into a situation where they then have the feeling now they have to execute somebody. And that is not the way you should do. You should de escalate a situation to see how to help the person, how to get the person out of anxiety and the feeling of dread, and not to push him more and more into a corner till the life-saving measures is the only last resort they can see. The other case is the case of Mouhamed Dramé of Dortmund. He was killed in August. A 16-year-old, yeah. He was killed in August 2022. And it was again a situation where he was in a mental crisis situation. He had been to hospital, referring himself into a hospital one night before. He wasn't taken into, he was sent back to the place where he was. So here is another thing we see in common. For Lamin, the ambulance has been called. They were not coming and doing it without the police, and later on not coming. Here, Mouhamed went himself to the hospital and they did not admit him for not believing him, sending him back. And the next day, he was standing there in the yard of a church and with a big knife and threatening to kill himself. So the people of the organization there were calling the police, and the police came, and within 20 minutes, Mouhamed was shot by a machine gun 5 times. Boom, 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 boom. Tack. And before that, covered in tear gas. And shortly after that, tasered. So when one calls back the situation and the reaction of the people, the first thing was like the police officer, like always, the police officers were feeling threatened for their life. That is what they were saying. And even the minister was going as far as that this is the right of the police officers to make decisions like that to protect themselves. What later came out is that from the time spraying the pepper spray on him, putting the taser on him, shooting the taser on him, and shooting him 5 times, it was all a matter of seconds. Until they started the action with the pepper spray, Mouhamed was at the back against, sitting down on his knees against the wall. So all he did, getting up for being attacked, first with pepper spray, secondly with taser, was a very normal situation. You don't just stay there. But the sequence, how it happened, was so fast that there was not even any possibility to have, a sort of well done reflection. So what we see is that the strategy of the police was right from the beginning, where they were not have even talked to the man. They were saying our strategy is pepper spray, taser, and then shooting. And the man with the machine gun was told he is the last man standing. He was outside, even behind a fence. So if I have a police strategy that is working before even first contact happen along these lines, what do I have to wonder about where it will lead to? It will lead exactly to that point, because this is how they designed it to be done. And after he was shot 5 times, the first thing they did is to handcuff him while he was fighting for his life. And at the end of the day, the argument now is, as we look at the court, the main argument line will be like, they tried to prevent the suicide by killing him. So, I mean, how cynical can one be? And this is what I also mean, where it's not only the missing expertise, the missing training, the negligence of the police towards Black people in the first place. Secondly, the excessive force, the dehumanization, the prejudice they have with Black people, like just, pretending to be deaf, pretending, or being dangerous in a situation where they just try to get out somewhere. And then we cross over to the litigation. In that case of Mouhamed Dramé, we even have a prosecution that was put in charge against the police officers, which is very, very rare. It's like a single case that it happened, that the police officers was straight charged with manslaughter. So, but now the court case is running, and I still have a bad feeling in my guts that the outcome will be again something else. That police officers have to be protected from being accountable for killing people, And when you tell them regarding to the beginning, how they see it, how they plan it, how they behave, how they escalate, how they assume wrong things about people, and you tell them all this is racist, then the prosecution and the courts will say, no, it's not racist, for they didn't wake up that day and say, I want to kill a Black person. As if racism and racial discrimination is starting with the process of killing. No, it's not. It starts with the prejudice, it starts with the negligence, it starts with the escalation, and it leads to the killing. But if I disconnect these two from each other, then there will be no justice. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. At this point, I think I would love to welcome Sister Marianne Ballet, a distinguished activist and community uh, worker. And she has been at the forefront of several cases, several campaigns going on. And she has initiated a network, Touch One, Touch All. So I would like to say, Sister Marianne, over to you.
Thank you so much. To begin with, I would like to really say that I've been absolutely overwhelmed by what the two sisters said before, and I think we need at least a minute of silence, or maybe a time to be able to mourn as well in this online and together, in order to simply give back part of the dignity that all the people, the sisters, the brothers, the daughters, mothers, have been bereft of in the process of their brutal encounter with police officers. And I would like to quote a poem that was written actually by Natalie Etoke, and she wrote it about actually the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. But I have the impression that it meets some of the feelings that we have. And she wrote, "Sometimes I feel so useless, so hopeless, in front of the world's miseries. I have nothing left except sympathy, empathy, compassion. The aching in my chest reminds me that we have a heart to feel the pain of the others, a spirit in touch with the spirits of others, praying for love, asking for forgiveness, looking for happiness. The beautiful smile of this newborn reminds me that there was a time not so long ago when Hutu, Tutsi, Twa used to live together and love each other. The beautiful smile of this newborn gives me hope. The beautiful smile of this newborn is the beginning of a new era." And in order for this new era to be actually born, if I may express so, I think we have some kind of requisitive. And, we are this is now the last year of the UN Decade for People of African Descent. And I have the impression that this decade is being actually implemented without one of the pillars of the decades. That is the Durban Declaration of Plan of Action. And we know that there was this World Conference Against Racism, 2001, in Durban, in South Africa. And there's a declaration and a plan of action that was actually adopted. And in the plan of action, there are some very clear measures that should be taken by any states, whether it's Germany or Britain or any other state, in order for protect people of African descent. So let me just name a few, and we remember that TDP is one of the most thorough catalog of measures that have been adopted so far. So this is an obligation for the states to implement these measures. So the first one is to ensure that the police and immigration authorities treat migrants in a dignified and non-discriminatory manner. And this doesn't apply to migrants, but anybody who is being considered as a migrant in the eyes of the police. And for that, they need to be organized some kind of specialized training courses for administrators, police officers, immigration officials, and other interest groups. So specialized training courses. Then also, always the matter is whether they are compulsory or not. I think that we will agree that they should be compulsory. It's not something like you choose to apply human rights or not. This is your obligation. Then we have also Article 71, urges states, including their law enforcement agencies, to design and fulfill and fully implement effective policies and programs to prevent, detect, and ensure accountability for misconduct by police officers and other law enforcement, which is motivated by racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, etc., and to prosecute perpetrators of such misconduct. And we have seen with what the two sisters were saying, that we need an independent body of inquiries. That has been as well what came out of the NSU process in Germany and any other cases of death. We remember these are not cases of, something. These are people who have been brutally murdered and killed. So we need an independent body of inquiries, and knowing, how we as communities, we follow very thoroughly the what is being done. I should say that it should be an independent body of inquiries, including the victims and organizations of victims, because we are well informed, and the course of time, I'm speaking especially for all the families of our sisters and brothers who have been killed and murdered. They are experts. And it leads us to another point, that is the credibility of victims and witnesses, because we have seen, on the basis of what has been said before, that even if the victims express something, they are not actually believed. And this is the case of Rita, for the family, the family members, or in what have been said before. Then, of course, 72 effective measures to eliminate the phenomenon popularly known as racial profiling. I think we don't have to very much to comment on that. 74, so to promote, implement policies that promote a high quality and diverse police. But we know that it's not enough to have somebody looking at us in the police. The training has to be done, and you have also to dismantle your own bias. And then what is also important is the importance of investigation. Article 285 urges states to undertake investigations to examine possible links between criminal prosecution, police violence, and penal sanctions, and on the other hand, and racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related interests on the other. And it say that it should the states have to take necessary steps for the eradication of such links and discriminatory practices. So it's all about human rights training and awareness training, Article 138. And then there is something that is recognized as well, is the necessity for special measures or positive actions for the victims of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, etc., to promote their full integration into society. So we have also, and added to that, we need measures in order for witnesses not to be intimidated, for also families to have the support and strength to be able to carry on these kinds of investigations that can last for years and even decades, looking at Maria Messa, Oury Jalloh, and other of our sisters and brothers. So this is what we actually need in order to have as well the emotional capacity and the necessary health in order to be able to still be there breathing and to be able to be committed to the causes of our sisters and brothers who have been brutally murdered and killed. Maybe I could give you back the floor back to you.
Thank you very much.
To really thank other sisters and yourself for sharing these really devastating moments.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for that. We have, yes, we have Melis, who's saying thank you so much for sharing, and for all the work you are doing. And yes, on a religious note, these stories are extremely painful to listen to. I'm crying. This is beyond words. Lord, we cry out for justice. Yes, thank you so much for joining in, and leave your comments. Let us know where you're joining in from. As we continue, we would like to show a film. It's roughly 11 minutes. It's about the life of Yaya Jabbi, a refugee who was also killed here in Hamburg in police custody. And after that, we can talk about the personal impact such killings have on families and on our communities. I would then hand over to Sister Jennifer Kamau, who will talk to us about the case of Rita Ojunge.
I am the brother of late Yaya Jabbi. He was born after me, and he was the second brother I have. Since our childhood period, we were all living together with our parents and some of our family members in the compound. We all eat together as a family. We slept together in the same bed. We played together, worked together in our family's farm, and so on. When he was at the age of 6, my parents took him in an Arabic school where they learn Arabic and Islamic religion. During his studies in that school, he was really sharp and very clever. He had a very good relationship with his teachers and always come out with good results at the end of every academic year. During his study in that school, they used to go to school 5 days in a week, starting from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. After school in the afternoon, he will take the lunch from home and take it to the family's farm, where the family members are working, and some of our farms are a little bit far from our home. They will put the food in a bowl and put it on his head. Then he will walk fast in a very hot sun and take it to the place where the family members are working. During this time, my dad normally stay in France, but sometimes in our home, and my mother is permanently with us in our hometown. He has a very good relationship with everyone in the family and a hardworking, sharing joy, happiness, and kindness to everyone. When he was at the age of 12 to 13, as he was going to school, when he come from school, he did some homework for the family and also goes to the farm together with us. Sometimes, if we come from farm, he used to go to fishing to catch some fish in a small river and lakes near to our village. When he go out for fishing, he normally have some fish which are enough for us to get some food to eat and later distribute the rest to our neighbors. Those efforts from him really help us sometimes and prevented us from buying fish in the market. When he was at the age of 15, he went to study Islam and Quran in a village for about 90-kilometer distance from our hometown to further his education. To the place he went to further his education, the majority of the students were taken there by parents or by force, but he went there by himself and no one took him there. This is all because of his love for education. He was really a hard-working man who doesn't like to rest. He always wants to be working, and many people in our family are proud of him about his hard working, honesty, lovely, respect, kindness, and always smiling. Because he always wanted to help the family and the neighbors too. That is why the sadness about his death is not only in our family, but also the neighbors. They really like him so much, and that's all because of his love and caring. He was very obedient to the people and the family. When my parents talked to him, he listened to them. When my brother talked to him, he listened to him. When I talked to him, it's the same too. We were in a very good relationship till the end of his life. He left our home country in August 2013 and went to Libya. When he left our home country, by then I was in Italy. In October 2013, he tried to cross the Mediterranean Sea from Libya to Italy, and thank God for that, he was successfully arrived in Italy safely. After the arrival in Italy, he called me and my brother that he arrived in Italy safely. And during this time, I normally spoke with him to know about the condition he lived in and to be ready to give a support if he requested for it. 2 weeks after his arrival in Italy, I was lying in the house and my friend called me on the phone and told me that I am here with your brother. They transferred them into our camp where I was living in Italy. I immediately woke up and walked out from the house to the place where my friend and Yaya was. When I saw him, I was very happy because it was 1.5 years that we didn't see each other and we only spoke on the phone. During the time we were living in Italy, we lived like how we were living in our home country with love, caring from each other. We never wanted to see each other in a difficult situation. We try to help each other out of any difficulties and often share very good advices to each other. 1 year after we met in Italy, I moved from Italy to Germany. When I arrived in Germany, I requested an asylum and transfer into a camp in Halberstadt. In October, he also made a move from Italy to Germany. He went directly to the police office and requested an asylum, and he was also transferred to Halberstadt. One morning, when I wanted to go and take my breakfast, I met him outside and we greeted each other nicely as we were all happy to meet each other again. After 2 weeks in Halberstadt, we were then transferred again to a small city called Haldensleben, where they said there is going to be our heim or home. We were living in Haldensleben for some months. Then I decided to come to Hamburg. While he was living in Haldensleben looking for a job, he went to job center in Haldensleben, Sachsen-Anhalt, and said that he wanted to work, but they told him that he didn't have the right to work yet. One day, he then called me that he wanted to come to Hamburg as it is a big city with some more job opportunities for youth than in a small city, Haldensleben. Because of these hopes, he decided to come to Hamburg. He first came to Hamburg in late November 2014. During this time, he wasn't homeless. He was not someone who lacked financial support for himself or a family member. If he is weak to help himself, the family members will be there for him. He knows that, and that was clear to him. And one thing I want to make it clear for everyone, that he was very happy to be in Germany here, and especially in Hamburg. He did not regret to come here because most of the opportunities he had here, he couldn't manage to have in his home country. Since he was living here, we always kept in touch. But one day, I tried to call him and I couldn't reach him on the phone. Then I started doubting about him, but later learned that he was in police custody. He was arrested on the 14th of January 2016. After 2 weeks, when he was arrested, he called me in the morning and I answered the phone. He greeted me nicely without any confusion, and he told me that he is now in the prison. He said to me, "But don't worry, soon I will be released." As they told me, my court will be in the next 2 weeks, and after that, I will be released, inshallah. In the same conversation, he asked me, "How is all the family? Are they all fine?" And I told him that they are all okay. He asked me again, "Did you tell my mom that I am in the prison?" And I told him, "No, not yet." He said, "Okay, better not to tell her. I won't be here for a long time." He was in the prison for a month, and he believed that no matter how long his prison time could be, it wouldn't be longer than 2 months. That was the first and last conversation I had with him in the prison. That was also the final conversation between me and him in this world. On the 20th of February, Friday 2016, I got a phone call that Yaya died in the prison in Hannover St. Hamburg. I got the phone call on the 20th, but he was died on the 19th.
Yes, so yeah, part of the tragic matters of this case is he was found with
0.6.
1.6 gram cannabis. These were the grounds with which he was arrested. I think the family have done very well to wrap up that summary of Yaya Jabbi's life, because sometimes our loved ones get reduced to simply being a victim. And I would just like to know shortly, how does this really impact families and the community? What is the impact of such killings on the family? And on the other hand, how does it impact our Black communities? Yeah, maybe Aji, could you, or anyone who would like to answer to that question?
I'd just briefly like to say that we're stereotyped, you know. In England, there was a famous case, not many people know about it, Christopher Clunis, and it was the first time that they used big, black, and dangerous. That is what they're still using. At my son's inquest, they said the police said he was the biggest man that they've seen. And the coroner said, but you're bigger than him. You're taller than him. You're bigger than him. You know, there's this, they like to stereotype, to demonize our communities. I don't know. For me, that's what I know. And I always tell, for instance, my grandsons that, listen, they can say what they like, but don't you wear the coat that they give you. You have your own coat. You have your own qualities. You know, you don't have to accept what they try and, you know, put on you. You don't have to accept it, especially young Black men.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Kamau. She's based in Berlin, an activist and a researcher, and she's one of the co-founders of the International Women's Space. Jennifer Kamau, welcome. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And this story is, of course, that we all share what Aji and Marcia and all of you have shared. They really, you see the magnitude of how we are perceived and how our bodies are disregarded. Today I want to talk about Rita Awour Ojunge, who 5 years ago disappeared from a home in Hohenleipisch. Hohenleipisch is in some place in Brandenburg. Usually these homes are in the middle of nowhere. So when she came to Germany, she applied for protection and she was put in these shelters that are in the middle of nowhere. And in that incident, her body disappeared. She disappeared from this shelter. And amidst all the reports of her disappearance, nobody got concerned. And it took 3 months for the police to find her body, which was just 200 meters behind this same shelter. And this was after demonstrations, press releases, and all the political pressure that we could put. And this is between the two organizations, Women in Exile and now International Women's Space, that after 3 months, they found her body just 200 meters behind this shelter. She had lived in this shelter for 7 years, and she left behind 2 children, 2 years and 4 years. And the system, which the asylum system, the asylum seekers are put in, is very racist, because Rita had consistently complained of violence within the structures, and she had complained of how she faced difficult challenges within these hinds, but nobody even was concerned about this plight of her situation. She had also been waiting for her asylum case for quite a long time. She had demanded to get an accommodation out of the asylum home, because in these asylum homes she was living in a very small room with her 2 children. So there was also the part of the negligence and the depression that is put upon people within the asylum system with the living conditions. And so when she was found dead, it has been 5 years that the first suspect was taken in, because she had spoken of gender-based violence within the Heims. But then there was also this gruesome murder that left her body burned beyond recognition, and her remains were only found 3 months after within this shelter. And the person who had perpetrated the gender-based violence within the structure was taken into investigations, but then the person was eventually released. And then there was now the scenario of this death that happened. And there's always a confusion whether it is the same person or it's not the same person. But the model of burning beyond recognition is something that we also, people who are in Germany are aware is a system, we know how the system of burning beyond recognition is a way of destroying evidence here in Germany. And so the person who had perpetrated gender-based violence was released. The person who killed Rita has never been known. It has been 5 years. The prosecution in the police within the courts have not said, they don't communicate. They don't even give the proceedings to the lawyer. They are quiet. They say nothing. The case has never been decided. And just to give a perspective, the court process is in one of the most racist places in Brandenburg, the Cottbus area. And really, they don't care. They really don't care. So even when the prosecutor is asked, and there are so many organizations which are following up on the case of Rita, like Offer Perspective, Women in Exile also is also very, very, very committed to this process. Nothing. And the lawyer, Christina Clem, they will not communicate anything to the lawyer. They will not say where they are with the proceedings. They will not make a decision of this court process. And so we are still left in a limbo, because without a decision, we cannot make an appeal. The last communication, they said they thought it was because of these bans beyond recognition. They tried to insinuate that it is probably rituals, African rituals that were done on Rita. But of course, we know if there were African rituals which were done on Rita by this being banned, they would have caught the person, because it would have been an African with the African rituals. But that doesn't happen. So there is no further investigation. There is no decision. And then the case is just there for 5 years. And we get stuck there because there's nothing people can do, because there's no decision. You cannot appeal. And of course, the idea of them making a decision on this court process, the reasons they will give for closing the court will be the reasons for making an appeal, which will already prove there was nothing that was being investigated in these years. So what we have been doing is that we have been doing demonstrations demanding for justice for Rita, and commemorating this every year on the day of International Women's Day and the days on violences on women. But last week there was an event which was organized by feminist jurist legal fraternity in Berlin, and one of the cases that we Mariana, here you can help me with these German terminologies. Are you there?
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Yeah, we had a process where we were trying to collect signatures for something they called a Fachstellungsnahme. This is what they called an expert opinion, that this whole process of Rita would be undertaken by this feminist jurist organization, self-organized women, and it will get a limelight on this process. It was not the only case. There was also another case of justice for Mika, a very young boy who died at the carelessness of the doctors in the hospital. And this feminist groups, this feminist juristish group, was the suggestion was to adapt these expert opinions and resolutions over the year. So we are hoping with this, because it will be, the case of Rita will be published on the website of this feminist groups, that it will give some pressure that we can get a decision. Of course, we tried to brainstorm with other people who are in the group who have a legal perspective and seeing what else could be introduced or added to this process of Rita. But of course, it's still a court process that is happening. So I will not say much because Rita is a friend of mine, and I don't want to take the space for the other people who really are speaking from this first-hand experience. But it's just that the legal perspective and how our bodies are viewed, how our processes are determined, how much time it takes to even prove even things like the pain we perceive is like what all of you are saying, being assumed, pretending that someone is dead, and the way the audacity they have to say he's pretending to die, is the same. And when women come here for protection, for example, like Rita, the state failed to protect Rita. So you ask yourself, even when we come here to get protected, we are not protected. Actually, we are put in more vulnerable situations that lead to the deaths of asylum seekers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Another horrific story. What we hear with the negligence of not even investigating, and although not investigating, also not concluding anything, so that actually nothing can be done. And all this insinuation, when I heard this like African ritual, because of the burning of the body, I had to think of Oury Jalloh in the police cell in Dessau. So was this also an African ritual? And if we see that, and if we compare that, Oury Jalloh burned in a police cell. So where is the place? You should be very sure of the things that happen there. Where is the place where things are documented in a way that there will be no excuse? And yet, and still, they behave as if they cannot clear this case. They cannot clear what happened in police cell number 5 in Dessau. And taking into account that is the third person killed there, then is even more of a scandal, and beyond a scandal, that is beyond a failure, that is really the willingness to cover up, and it's the willingness to not deliver clarification, not to talk of justice or accountability at the end of the day.
Yeah, and back to the question of the impact on our communities. After all these cases, there is definitely an erosion of trust, and it's not clear to me how this trust is supposed to be restored when there has never been any acknowledgement. The truth is constantly being hidden. It's really devastating. And again, we have our young children, our young sons, our young daughters growing up in such hostile environments and carrying this fear within them of being a target simply because of the skin color. Sister Marianne has also some points you wanted to make, because you have been so active within the community. Can you say a few words again to this impact within the community, and how we as community members, what we can do in order to protect ourselves, and then to demand or to enforce some sort of justice? Is that possible? Do we have that power? What can we really do beyond being helpless?
To begin with, I think that I would like to thank you, Sister Toyin and Brother Mayemu, for what you have been doing all these years, and for this opportunity that we have today to be able to share and to strategize. So first, I mean, thank you so much. And my thanks also, to Sister Vanessa, to Sister Marcia, to Sister Jerry, to Sister Ajab, because you have been also, you embody what we want to say about our power. We are not aware of the power that we have. And, if we carry on working individually, we cannot actually gain this momentum. But I think the time has come to really bring these, bring the various families and the various organizations together. That is why, this idea of this platform was born. It's as being a long time since we've been talking about it. There have been several initiatives to be able to build it. I think it's the time now to actually have it and be able to share. And in that connection, I would like to say thank you as well to people who are not here today. I'm talking about the women of Adefra. I'm talking about Saint for Tonkam. I'm talking about all these sisters and brothers who have been really at the forefront of what we are now. So in our Pan-African Women's Empowerment Liberation Organization, we have been also doing our best in order to take the lead when it was necessary, and also support families or support organizations. This is why, Jerry, I'm so happy that you were underlining the fact that it is a whole coalition, may it be for Rita, or especially as well for Oury Jalloh as well. With our brother Muktaba, with our the brother and the all other sisters and brothers. But what I noticed is that sometimes within the community we have a great mobilizations, but at the same time some kind of divisions. Okay, we know about this phenomenon of perpetrator reversal, that is blaming the victim in one way or another, to discredit the victim, as if whether may it be the way the person who is still a human being has been. We are talking about your human being. So if you kill a human being, it's homicide, and full stop, finished. And then Also, what we've noticed and what we've been also underlining before is the carelessness. The carelessness not be treated as an act of racism as well. Now, Jerry, you were talking about the feministischen Juristen Tag, so these lawyers, feminist lawyers conference, as is more than a conference. I think it was also a very great moment, and it should not stop there. But with Pavlo brought 3 expert statements, one connected to as well the resolution 1325 is not what we are talking exactly what we're talking today, but it has with the recognition of a suffering during the past, with the recognition of the genocide against Ero and Nama, and especially the use of resolution 1325 in order to bring women, especially and women's organization, at the table of negotiation. So here we see again the way our organizations have been neglected, are not part of the discourse, are not part of measures that aimed at clearing the facts and bringing the perpetrators, to any kind of judgment and justice. So, and the second one is about participation law, and the third one is against the use of chemicals which are forbidden here abroad. And once again, it's about the respect of our lives. What I've been noticing is that depending on the status of the people, of the sister or brother who has been killed, or the person who has been killed, there is sometimes a different way that the mobilization is done. And so, and as at the same time, there's a direct connection between asylum, or the non-granting of asylum, and insecurity and violence, especially about women. And this again, gender affects also the way the community is mobilizing. Because remembering Mariam Ndeyesa, for instance, remembering the fact that we're talking about femicides, but it's not really recognized as such. And there is sometimes a little bit less mobilization when a woman is being killed. So we have to acknowledge that and make sure that we all mobilize in the same way for anybody, any of our dear beloved ones. And this has been also what we've been doing at the Central Council of the African Community, especially in terms when we initiated the campaign for the UN Decade for People of African Descent.
Thank you so much. Sister Vanessa had to leave, and she has sent me a note, and I would read it out now. Dear comrades, siblings, and friends, I unfortunately already have to leave at 7:30 due to constraints of my travel schedule. So I am sending my notes to dear Sister Awour Ojunge and hope that she can read them. I am sending my gratitude and love. I was to speak about Christy Schwundeck today, though what I will say is obviously connected to the state murder of so many others globally. And for centuries, policing, just like borders and militarism, are methods of racial capitalism to keep this brutal system alive. And the mass murder of our people is directly connected to the operations of this system, which is built on Black labor, enslavement, and colonialism, and the super exploitation of the dark proletariat. Like the great Black abolitionist and communist Webb Du Bois once said, Christy Schwundeck was brutally murdered by the German state on May 19th, 13 years ago, in the Mainzlandstrasse 315-321, shortly after 9 o'clock in the morning by a cop who stood in front of her. Her murder is not so known in the German context, and this is related to a gender bias as well. Christie's murder, however, shows how state institutions operate hand in hand in the criminalization and murder of Black life, ranging from the foster care regime to the job center that manages poverty, especially Black, Brown, Roma, and migrant poverty, migration and border regimes, and the criminalization of mental health struggles. If we ignore how these systems of operation are connected within the capitalist system, then we will never get free. Christy Schwundeck came to Germany from Benin City, Nigeria in 1995 and applied for asylum. It is important to remember that state violence starts here. The violence of dispossession and forced displacement. African people are chasing their resources that have been stolen from us. As Chairman Omali Yeshitela reminds us, she received the residence permit and moved to Aschaffenburg, where she worked as a cleaner and lived with her white husband. After some years, the marriage crumbled. Her daughter from her first marriage was taken into foster care regime. This is part of the violence of policing, the criminalization of Black families and parents, and the stealing of our children. The stealing of our children by the state. This is where Christy Schwundeck developed severe depression. Mental health is also connected to societal questions, racism and capitalism. This is a further dimension of policing. Since then, Christy Schwundeck was fighting to get her daughter back. The state steals and kills in 2011. The year Christy Schwundeck was killed, she lived in a shelter in Frankfurt am Main and worked as a cooking support. Although she had submitted an application for social support, which was confirmed, she had not received her benefits until the 19th of the month. She had no money, nothing to eat, so she went to the job center and asked for partly payment. People often say that it was only 10 euros and asked why. Why was she killed because of 10 euros? Christy Schwundeck was not killed because of 10 euros. She was killed because she, as a Black person, rendered migrant, no one is born a migrant or citizen. Working poor person resisted against the system and claimed what is hers, claimed that she has a right to live, the right to live a life without denigration and dehumanization. What happened on that day has been misconstructed. She stayed calm, asked for the money, as one of the job center staff also said. At 8:50 a.m., staff at the job center called the police. They said she was hysterical. This again is related to how Black people are often read. 2 police officers arrived at 9 a.m. 4 other people, despite Christy, were already in the room. So, in total, 6 people and Christy Schwundeck. After some minutes, 1 police officer shot her in the stomach from 2.5 meters. In January 2012, the Public Prosecutor's Office dropped the case against the police officer who killed the 40-year-old. She had acted in self-defense. That is what they always say, isn't it? The statements of the witness present were anything but congruent. Christy Schwundeck was pathologized as a fearful, aggressive, crazy, and unpredictable person, not only by the police and the judiciary, but also in the media. And this is nothing new. This is an extension of the violence against Christy Schwundeck. It is a criminalization of her resistance and her demand for a life in dignity. As the initiative of Christy Schwundeck, we asked the questions. We asked what happened in room 22 of the job center. Why did they shoot at her? But make no mistake, there is no justification for killing Christy Schwundeck. And we knew that the legal system goes hand in hand with the police, the job center, the migration and border regime. Legal struggle for us was a site of strategic resistance to get more people mobilized for justice, because we know this system will never give justice. It is a system built on mass murder, exploitation, mass death, and genocide. Christy Schwundeck's husband, from whom she was separated, and her brother, who lives in London, filed a complaint of joint plaintiffs against the dismissal of the investigation and demanded a trial in which the entire circumstances of Christy Schwundeck's death and the proportionality of the use of weapons should be investigated. The appeal against the dismissal was rejected in March 2012. As an initiative, we supported the family's legal action, but at the same time scandalized the social dynamics and conditions in which the violence that Christy Schwundeck experienced on many levels is embedded. While Christy Schwundeck was pathologized and criminalized in the public media, her shooting was initially scandalized in both anti-racist and anti-poverty movements as because she was Black, or because she was poor and a HAT-4 recipient. The truth is, the specific form of violence that Christy Schwundeck experienced as a Black, dark-skinned, poor, migrant, mentally vulnerable woman and mother is entangled. Police violence, and I would simply say policing, because it is always violence, which is particularly violence for poor migrants, Black people with mental health problems, homeless people, people who consume and are repressed and exploited by society, and often ends deadly, is not an exception, but a fundamental part of the workings of this system. But Christy Schwundeck's murder did not mark the beginning of the violence she experienced. As an African migrant from Nigeria, she was looking for a better life in Europe. That Europe that is largely responsible for centuries of super exploitation of Black people on the continent and the plantations, resource extractivism, neo-colonial and neo-imperial warfare, mass displacement and murderous regimes, the Europe that systematically murders, deports, and imprisons our people. Christy Schwundeck has already been degraded and dehumanized by a migrant regime. Police violence is also at work here. Furthermore, it is particularly the interplay between welfare regimes such as youth welfare offices and psychiatric institutions that caused Christy Schwundeck to experience violence, to have to fight for her daughter, and to become mentally ill. Criminalization happens not only through the police and judiciary, but also in the context of custody hearings, hospitals, psychiatric institutions, and schools. What Christy Schwundeck teaches us is that criminalization has many faces, And it is especially the group that are often oppressed: Black, dark-skinned, refugee and migrant people, poor people, migrants and illegalized sex workers who experience this violence on a daily basis. Justice in these cases means abolishing the conditions that murder Black people on an everyday level, on the seas and deserts, the jails and the camps, the job centers, the streets, the domestic spaces and hospitals. Justice for Christy Schwundeck means abolishing the conditions that produce the violence that Christy Schwundeck and Undai Mariama Sarr, Rita Awour Ojunge, Oury Jalloh, Dominique Komadio, Usman Sey, and many, many more have experienced over and over again. It means globalizing our struggles from Rigg to Lamin Touray to Sandra Blonde to Giovanna Nagueira in Brazil, where a working class Black woman is killed every 23 seconds. But it also means remaining in relationship with those who were murdered here in Germany, in Europe, on the Mediterranean, Libya, and many other places. That is also why we are here today. Christy and everyone, we will never forget you. Touch one, touch all. Justice means revolution. That was from Vanessa Thompson.
Yes, and this opens the scope actually when we think of what strategies should we employ and how the system can be changed. We have heard about police officers who should be trained. Yeah, we have heard about we have heard about that means to educate. If we see it as a film, to educate the actors of the screenplay. But as long as the storyboard is the same, there should be no big difference to be expected from trained actors on the base of the same storyboard. So we also have to think of how to change the storyboard. We have to empower ourselves and get the expertise, and moreover, to collect those cases, to also make clear that there is systemically no state of law when it comes to Black people. No justice, no accountability means there is no piece of law, there is no state of law. And that is not only the case in Brazil or in the US, is also here in Europe, of the so-called home of the human rights, of the values, of the European values. And this is something where the people of the white supremacy cannot live up to their own values. They never did. And if they do not change thoroughly, they never will. So we have to make sure to find ways to mirror them and hold them accountable in order to change. Okay.
Yes, thank you. And we are reaching the end of our panel today. And I would like to, before I ask Sister Marianne Ballet to make the closing statement, I would like to ask each of our guests to give a statement, one or two sentences. And I thank you all very much for taking the time, for being here tonight. And I look forward, as this is the beginning of our global network, and we will be having more meetings and conversations. Yes, thank you so much. I hand over to Sister Marcia for the first statement.
Hello, yes. So, sorry, did you say you hand over to me first?
Yes, I did.
Yes, lovely. Okay, that was extraordinary truths that we've just heard from our sisters, and it embodies exactly what we've been each individual panelist has discussed, and therefore echoes the patterns of the systemic failures that Black people of African descent have received for centuries. And for me, I call it modern day lynching, and that the police stations and mental health units and prisons are modern day plantations where Black people are overrepresented, and the state has never afforded us any real justice, and there is no justice. And what are we doing differently? So just to try to wrap it up quite quickly, I'd like to tell everybody that I may have told you before, to the hosts, regarding a people's tribunal in the United Kingdom. And Aji and myself are part of a coalition of families called the United Families and Friends Campaign. It's a coalition that was set up in the late 90s in the UK by Black families following the deaths of Joy Gardner, Roger Sylvester, and Brian Douglas, a Black woman that was restrained in her home by immigration officers and police officers by putting 13 feet of tape around her face until she died in front of her child, 5-year-old child at the time. And Roger Sylvester, that was restrained following restraint by police officers for a mental health crisis. And Brian Douglas, that was hit over the head with a baton, 11 times his body weight, and all these officers walked away free. And so the coalition has been brought together. It's our 25th year of our anniversary, where we gather yearly in memory of our loved ones, and we demand justice and write a letter to the current UK Prime Minister. And we've never been afforded a proper meeting, and no real discussions or change, even though there are unlimited recommendations by unlimited reports for decades in the United Kingdom. So what we intend to do is to put the state on trial ourselves, and it's actually going to happen. It's in the process. We have a website. It's called the People's Tribunal, where we will be looking collectively at a number of cases in the UK to show the systemic patterns and to forensically show the evidence and the patterns in the United Kingdom in order to force and put added pressure on the government. Collectively, we can win. There are a number of scandals in the UK at the moment of this year. We have the post office scandal, and we have the NHS blood scandal, which is very high profile right here in the UK, which has highlighted injustices and corruption and cover-ups. And this is no different. And we must do the same, particularly about Black men, because, like I said, it's modern day slavery. So I'd like you to follow the People's Tribunal. Our investigators and panels will be international investigators looking at the cases. It will be a public Hopefully it will happen towards the end of this year or the beginning of next year. I will speak more closely to the hosts about it, and perhaps we could have another conversation about the People's Tribunal. It's very important to work internationally because this is a global issue for Black people of African descent. You know, we have met with the United Nations following the death of George Floyd, and you know, globally that the United Nations has highlighted these very issues that we're talking about. And so we have to look at how can we change the system. And for us at the moment, it's the climate for it, for a people's tribunal, for the people to put the state on trial with all the ample evidence that have been collected for decades in the United Kingdom and globally. So watch this space. Thank you very much for hosting this really important platform and the continuation of our international collaborations together as Black people of African descent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you so much.
Aji?
Yes. My beloved brothers and sisters, do you know what? My daughter is was listening to some of the awful lives that were lost in Germany. It just beggars belief. I don't know. I just don't know. My heart goes out. Honestly, we have things bad here. It's bad, but I think we're a little bit ahead in the fact that our battles here are not the same. They're bad, but I think we're a step ahead. You know, we do have a little bit of sort of leeway. You know, we have our police force. There are quite a few Black police officers, although they face a lot of discrimination, and they often take the police force that they work with, you know, to tribunal. But I just feel that it just makes me want to fight more. It just makes me some awful things that you hear. Really, really bad things. You know, people that have nothing. What have they done? It's just because we're this color. Which makes me think that there's a lot of envy. There's a lot of you know, how we, you know, but one thing I know, we are strong, and we're going to overcome. We're going to beat them down. We really are. It might take time, but you know, it's definitely going to happen. I just was, my daughter was just reminding me that when we met the Commissioner for Police in London, it was a lady actually, Cressida Dick, and she, you know, she came to apologize eventually after after 8 years, the police apologized for the death of Shaney and what had happened, and we, you know, we made them do certain things in order, because they don't pay you money really. They just, you know, you just have to make them put their money where their mouth is, and you know, and I said to her, listen, when my grandsons go out every day, I'm praying, are they going to meet the big gang, the police, or the little gang with knives? In England, we have a lot of knife killings, you know, kids killing each other. And to me, that says it all, because they're all on a par. They're all to be feared. And I just pray that sometime there'll be a world where all of this will have to stop. I'm an idealist, I'm an optimist, but the awful things I've heard today, just awful, awful things. I really thank my dearest brother and sister for continue to host these sessions. You've got to spread it. It's lots of people need to hear this. You've got to spread the message because you're doing such a fantastic job. And thank you so much for inviting Marcia and I. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. You're muted, Jennifer.
I was just observing the German cases and I realized all of those people were asylum seekers. I don't know if you all noticed that they were all asylum seekers, yeah?
Some of them.
Some of them. Mbobda was not an asylum seeker, but at least a good number of them.
Jennifer De Souza.
Sorry?
Johanna De Souza, excuse me, please.
Yeah, and Mbobda was not an asylum seeker, but Oury Jalloh, Christy Schwundeck also, Rita Ojunge, Mouhamed Dramé, Lamin, all these people, yeah? And when you think how many years ago these deaths have happened, it is sad to realize, not to realize, we know how the asylum system puts people in a certain state. It depresses people. It is like a death chamber, being in an asylum system here in Germany, because of how the system operates. Even acknowledging racism is a big discussion that we have to keep fighting and being consistent about the racism. But it also makes me still more sad to realize now with the new asylum laws, with the common European asylum system, it's going to get worse. But still, we still have to do the work. We cannot afford to give up, because if we want to go far, we have to go together. So thank you for this platform, and let's continue soldiering on, because the fight continues.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Sister Marianne, would you like to make the closing statement?
Thank you very much. Actually, after Vanessa had spoken, there was not much to be added. So I thank her as well for her statement. And there are 3 to 5 times more risks to be shot by the police if you are suffering from mental sickness. I think I'm no longer Jerry. And there's also how much more if you are an asylum seeker, as Jerry was saying, and the risk of being ignored seem to be also increased if you are a woman or a child, because there are children as well who are actually killed, but we do not hear about it. And in Pavlomas also, we have mentoring projects, as is Fawive Vitamin P, Pablo Palaga, Source d'Espoir. It's in the framework of a program, big program mentioned, Stärke mentioned. So, but how is it possible to strengthen each other if racism is not overcome? And this is a warning to all political parties, including those who are actually applying to be sitting in the European Parliament after these terrible laws have been also adopted. If we don't face and overcome racism, there is violence is going to really increase. And when we talk about democracy, democracy without overcoming racism is useless. And then it reminds me as well of what Abena Busia wrote. You know, we adopted one of her poems and as an anthem, that is liberation. And together with other sisters, she wrote in you know, a book called African Women Writing Resistance. So I'm joining my voice to the voices of all the sisters who have also said that, yes, this is a time for resistance. And talking about tribunal, there was a tribunal that was organized as well years ago, and it was about putting the perpetrators of Mafa, the great destruction, the destruction of our African communities, on trial. And then we have to, you know, the abolition movement was mentioned. So what we want is actually another kind of justice, because, you know, we have also healing justice. We need also the kind of justice that is much more in tune with what we consider as justice, to reinstall some kind of balance. And as we move towards the 25th of May, that is also African Liberation Day, we have to see what our sister was saying about systemic failures, but also about celebrating as well our victories, even if it's very difficult. And because of this, and because, as I said, a group of women, young women, elder women, came together and wrote an extraordinary book. The last chapter is about we are our grandmother's dreams. And this is why we want to organize a demonstration on the 31st of July to celebrate, 30 years of Pan-African Women's Liberation Organization, but also to celebrate all the struggle that started as well on the African continent, because we are our grandmother's dreams of unity, of resistance, of love, of might.
Yeah, thank you very much, all sisters that have been here. It was a very powerful event, and the conclusion is we have to go on, and we have to win at some point. Okay, so let's close the event. Thank you all for coming, and see you very soon again. We announced the African Liberation Day 2024, 25th of May, anywhere in Germany. We want to stage power strike on 23rd of May from 10 a.m. to 10 past 10 a.m., where we want all Black and BIPOC folks to hold for 10 minutes whatever they do, be it at work, be it on the street, be it somewhere. A Black bus driver, a Black taxi driver, keep standing to make our people seen and what we do, and that we are there, and that we want justice and we want equality. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Touch one.
Touch all.
Touch one.
Touch all.
Oh, touch one, touch all.
Yes. Touch one, touch all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Touch one, touch all.